What's up, everybody? It's Chad. We're back again with another episode of Ask Chad, Grassy Logic for season 4. I'm here with my homie JJ from JJ's World. Or actually, what do you actually call your company? Because I know on Instagram is JJ's World, but is there an actual official name?
So we're officially, our license name is JJ's Garden, but obviously I don't know if you know, but there is another JJ's Garden grow store. So a lot of people do mix us up. So I do get that a lot. But on our up and coming renewal, we're gonna change it to No Till World, and that's gonna be our official brand name and company name. But right now it's just JJ's Garden by No Till World. Currently.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So Gino just showed me. It looks like the stream's going up good and everything. So awesome. Thank you for that. And thank you everybody for watching today. I know we're live on Twitch. We did that last year, but we haven't done it this season yet. So. It's good that we're doing that. We had a little bit of a blooper at the beginning, so if you guys are watching on Twitch, you get to see that. But tomorrow we're going to edit out for the other versions.
Are we going to edit that?
I mean, 10 seconds. So thank you so much for joining me. Without further ado, please go ahead and give us the whole introduction and spiel of yourself.
Yeah. So I'm JJ, as some of you may not know, but JJ's Garden. We produce single source, no-till, living soil, organic flower, and live rosin. So we take the extra time to really care for our soil, and our plants really appreciate that. And our product really shows for it. But we're just a micro-licensed 200 plants. I have 45 flower lights, so I kind of really space my plants out. It takes a little bit a longer veg time, but I don't think it's a really big issue. I think plant count is just I don't know. It's a big topic you can go into, but I prefer the small batch and really taking your time with your plants and getting them big and keeping them healthy.
Definitely, man. And I think that's what the industry almost globally is kind of finding out too, is that we're better off with a smaller garden than we are with a millions of square footage grow. That works for alcohol, that works for other industries. It just doesn't work for cannabis. That's not how that's not how the industry works. That's not how the plant really grows. It's not tobacco. I think a lot of people have the misconception that it's going to be like tobacco. Even tobacco is probably not even like that.
At large scale, everything can get overlooked very easily, and it's something that if you're going to grow cannabis, why do it half-ass? That's the way I kind of look at it.
No, 100%. If you're starting out, just experimenting it with it, whatever. But yeah, if you're going to do this on the large scale with the big boys, micro or not, you do it right.
Exactly.
This is your product, this is your company and everything. So, and I noticed that, you said that you do no-till. And actually one of the questions I was going to have is, are you guys single source? So do you do all your rosin and everything just from your no-till garden, or do you kind of implement other people's stuff too, collaborations?
So we are an integrated micro. So I do have a manufacturer. So I do produce my own single source rosin, but I currently haven't done any collabs or any kind of washes for anyone. It's just no one's really offered. I haven't really thought of it just because I've always had so much. I just had so much going on with my own garden, but it's something I'm definitely open to. Obviously, splits and tolls is a hard topic because you just need the right material. But it's also the right relationship and the right grower and all the above. So it's a hard thing to do collabs, but I'm definitely open to it.
Nice, yeah. It's funny because we're in the opposite boat. We're not single source. Right now, we have to work with other farms and everything. So it's kind of funny because you're working from the other group, and I'm like, I have no choice but to collab.
Exactly.
And one day that'll change, but it's not today. So
there's nothing wrong with it. Everyone, there's people growing fire out here. There's a lot of people that have good material. So
yeah, definitely. Because we can only do as good as the product that we're getting is, or as good as the grower does.
Exactly.
So we can only kind of enhance it, I guess, more or less than anything is just kind of show you really its real potential. And I try to tell people that all the time. You're not going to take a bunch of random trim and turn it into some, fire award-winning rosin. It's just it's not going to happen. It's a particular way. We certain times and all kinds of other stuff. but it's not going to be some trim. It's not going to be last year's harvest that's been sitting out in a warehouse or something like that. You really have to almost plan when you want to make hash rosin. It has to be like one of those
Sure.
not spur of the moment. You can get away with that, but you do have to kind of plan for it, because if you don't pick the right plant, you don't pick the right time, you're going to run into issues. But we'll talk more about the hash stuff. Actually, that's one thing in the show I wanted to talk about, since we have another hash maker on the show with me. I wanted to dig in with that, but first I really wanted to dig into your company, everything. So how long, actually, let's start out, because we've had this conversation before. How old are you? Because I think you're one of the youngest ones in the industry.
Yeah. So I just turned 26 in July. So I was born in 1999. I am definitely very young, but I don't think that's really a hindering thing, or I honestly think age is just a number. It's being young. I think your learning curve is very, very high when you're young, and I think you can kind of absorb a lot more information being young. And so I think maybe it's a kind of an edge sometimes, but people don't respect me sometimes because I am so young. But it is what it is.
No, it is, man. I respect your work for sure. I had no clue how old you were when I met you and everything. I think someone did a post and tagged me, and that's the reason why that post existed. Like, who's the youngest person in the industry, and that was like really fun to share. But yeah, I was like, oh shit, I didn't even know how old you were. So I didn't even think of it, because I get the same thing. I'm almost 40. But if I don't wear my veteran hat around politicians, they think I'm just some young kid who doesn't know shit. So if I wear the hat, they get a little bit more respect. Like, okay, this guy's saying some shit, and I'm like, yeah, well, you talk to me. That's all I want. So no, I get it, man. Right. But I totally get it. But from the most part, what I've heard is your product is held in high regard. So I think for the most part, most people that do know what your stuff is don't even think about that in the first place. Maybe their thought process is, this guy must be doing it for years and whatever, generations, whatever. But you're just young and passionate, and that's what the industry needs. Like, I'm only going to be around for so long because I'm already almost 40. But you're young in your 20s and stuff like that, and you're ready to go, ready to rock, and you're in that prime zone. So we need the younger people in the industry. Like, I keep telling people, I'm like, yeah, like, that company's here now, but will it be here, essentially tomorrow, next year, or whatever? We don't know. And, those places have to get replaced. And who's going to replace them? The younger generations. And to be honest, and the younger generation shouldn't be held out of competition just because older people got in first, and haha, you should have got in when you could. It's like, well, sorry, asshole, I was 12. So it's like, what do you want me to do?
Been doing it long enough.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on from that, how long have you been, like, working with cannabis, and I guess essentially, been a cannabis user too?
So I've been, I would say, I've been growing since I was 18. So I started to get into the actual industry with harvest when I was 21. So that was 2020. And then from there, I went on to a Sawmill, and I became a manager over there. And then Dreams bought Sawmill, and from Dreams, I was with Dreams for maybe 3 or 4 months, and I started my own license. So I got my license in 2024. I had it for a whole year, kind of setting up the grow. It was definitely a lot of work. We kind of all handmade our beds, so that was a lot of effort, painting and lining them with plastic, putting in wood, and then actually filling them with soil. So that was like a long year. Obviously, the paperwork and all that, you can't just jump right into it. But I started actually selling and everything in July of 2025.
Nice, and congrats. And to be honest, I've ran into your stuff a couple times, and you're doing good work, man. It's really showing off, and yeah, I appreciate you. We need stuff like that in our market to prove that micros can put out really great craft cannabis, and it doesn't have to be some 40-year-old dude. It could be someone in whatever age bracket. It can be younger people, older people, whatever. It's, if you could put out fire, you put out fire. I know a dude who's like in his 60s. He's about to get his license, and he's putting out fire. And that'll be coming on the market sometime. So it's cool to see it from all ages. And one thing that I hope the industry can get to, because I'm there already. I'm kind of age blind when it comes to this as is, because it's new to all of us. It being legal. this whole thing is new to everybody. So I guess I'm blind when it comes to age, because all of us are young kids when it comes to this industry. But certain people in the industry I do know, run into that whole age gating thing, and it does get kind of shitty. So like I totally get it. But that's dope that you guys made everything yourself. You're doing the no-till, and I'm starting to see no-till become more of a popular thing as time goes on, in all industries and stuff like that. So we'll see as time goes, because all the growing stuff always changes. Maybe we'll see the no-till and the light dip thing, and that's probably already happening. But like it's something that I've seen, and actually I guess I wouldn't say notice a huge difference, but I do like the product that comes out at the end. Versus like just going straight hydro. Don't get me wrong, hydro is great, but for some reason when you put it in the no-till, it's almost like it reacts a little bit differently. And so that's great. So in your experience, like how have you really liked growing no-till versus the other methods that you have used before?
So I've always been growing with like Athena hydro with rock wool, cocoa, and I've kind of got dialed in with the crop steering, and I was like really like I'm a nerd with this stuff, so I kind of get in almost too deep into it. So I get really knowledgeable of it, and then my partner kind of came at me with this opportunity of this building, and he was like, I want to do this organic. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like that's not an issue. I don't really think that's too big of an issue. So we did it, and it's been life changing. I've noticed that my plants are just much happier. It's just way more flavor in my product, way more trikes. I feel like are bigger bulbs and bigger trichome heads. It's just the hash yields are more. I feel like it's just an overall better quality resin gland. And if you have a better quality resin gland, you have a better flavor. And the plant material, you can really control the soil. You can really get out the nutrients that you need, and really kind of just amend your soil how it needs to be. And you can get really clean, potent smoke.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with you on that. I've been seeing the differences too. And actually the one that really made me change my mind was Carver family over in Albuquerque, because he does living soil too. And so I went there and I saw his facility, and man, changed my mind. He had chili growing in there and all kinds of other little random fun plants. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, aloe vera. Yeah, just random stuff, and of course, don't get me wrong, you have the plants that are, helping out with the whole ecosystem that you have going on there. But, to be able to grow actual food within your crop, that's actually pretty cool. It's a nice way to shift too as well, and to show everybody that, yeah, you can grow anything, or, your other plants in this style too. It's not just meant for cannabis. So go ahead.
I said no way. It's not just meant for cannabis.
Right. It's just agriculture stuff, and it's cool to see the industry playing with that, and then we'll see what other direction we go in maybe 5-6 years, and where it's at. But I do think that no-till is here to stay, and technically it's been here the whole time. It's just now it's being more looked at in a better light, and it's mainstream. It's not just you're going to the store, grabbing a bag of soil and then throwing it in there and calling it organic. You're really working on the whole ecosystem inside of the soil, what's growing on top, what's going on the bottom, how much moisture is here and there. There's a lot that goes into it, and people don't really understand, because I've seen the grows like this, and you think that there'd be like an infestation of crazy bugs and this and that, but if you have it dialed in and it's good, you don't have to worry about any of that. You have a whole, like I said, ecosystem working on it. So what are some issues that you've seen yourself, working with no-till versus, working with like hydroponics or, rock wool and stuff like that? It has its own issues, but what are some that you people could expect working with no-till?
So I would say surprisingly, like right off the bat, I'm just going to get rid of the stigma. Everyone says that there's a lot of gnats or anything kind of like with living soil, and I have noticed in the past 7 years, I noticed more gnats with cocoa or rock wool and Athena than with my actual living soil. And that strictly is because the soil, when you buy it, I buy my soil. I bought my soil from Builder Soil. But whenever you first saturate that soil, or whenever you buy that soil, it comes with life. It has predator mites and everything that really takes care of all those gnats and everything. So there's all the beneficial bugs that kind of help you take care of those like nuances like gnats, because gnats are like so like common there in every single grow like you've ever walked into. But with living soil, I think you can really control the gnats. I rarely see any kind of gnats, but I would say as far as any kind of issues with the living soil, it's just you really have to amend and soil test your soil. When I first started to grow in my living soil, I ran like 2 or 3 rounds like full cycles of plants through my soil, and I kind of started to notice my my detriment, like the yield and just quality of the overall flower went down. And I was just feeding water and my weekly teas or terp teas or microbe teas, and I wasn't really amending the soil in between my harvest. And I really started to notice a huge difference when I actually got my soil test in between rounds and amending my soil and keeping everything balanced. Because once you start getting those imbalances, your plants start looking weird and they start showing. And once they start showing, you can't really do much about it because it's already damage is already kind of done. You can kind of like try to fix it, but the plant's not really gonna change too much. You just gotta wait for next round.
Until you fix your fuck up. That's great, man. And I take it, you've learned a lot too, from mistakes and all that too, and all that.
Sure.
So, and there's more to learn. We learn new stuff all the time. When it comes to cannabis, And I was told this in my interrogator school when I was in the Army. One of the instructors, he said that you never stop learning everything about this job until the day you die. But I kind of feel that can be applied to almost any job. And I'll add one more to it. The day you learn everything about that job is the day you need to quit. Because you're not passionate about it anymore. So either you die or you need to quit. So you're one of those two things. And I hope for cannabis, we always continue to learn and learn more about this plant, what it does and what it can do, and the best ways to go about growing it and all that. Because I think it's real cool that we're heading into an era where we have these different methods. You have the hydro, you have the rock wool, you have the deep water culture, you have the outdoor. And then you have the greenhouse light depth, and then you have, which living soil can be in pretty much any of those environments, really. Then you have the live in soil situation, the no-till. And to be honest, that's actually been really cool to see and watch. So I wish you nothing luck on that part, man. That's actually really cool to hear that, you're single source and doing it, that whole thing. So let's jump over to the hash conversation now, because, we've been talking about the glands and stuff like that. So what do you do when you're looking for like a plant that you want to wash? Are you kind of going in, do you have your own way? Or are you kind of doing the common, squeezing the plant, smelling it, do you go even further and, do more tests and stuff?
So there's a couple different tricks I've learned along the way, but ideally you just you put on a black glove, a black nylon glove, and you go up to the plants, usually like around week 8.5. You kind of rub the trichomes, and you can kind of feel if it's tacky, if it's sandy, and if the trichomes kind of stay intact and you're able to roll them like sand, then that's usually an indicator that the plant's gonna wash pretty well, or the glands are gonna stay intact, and so that they're just gonna yield a lot better. Because whenever you if you actually feel the trichome and it's slimy and you see all the trichomes burst up in your hand and it just becomes like a slime, that's usually the ones that are more terpy, and they usually are the ones that don't really yield as well. But besides that, I've even gone as far as just grabbing a branch and just tapping it on my back of my hand with a black glove and seeing if actual trichomes fall off. It's all just a visual kind of representation, and you can always just do a jar test if you absolutely needed to. You can do like 10 or 14 grams fresh frozen at like around week 8 and just freeze that for like 12 hours. And then just put some ice and water and shake it up in a mason jar and kind of see how much hash falls to the end. But it's all kind of a visual thing. But once you kind of like get numbers for certain plants, you can kind of do those visual things and see what, kind of compare it to new plants that you're kind of finding, or new hashers or new phenos you're hunting or whatnot.
Nice, man. I appreciate that. And for my listeners and stuff like that, what are some common misconceptions about hash rosin that you kind of want to clear up, while we're on the conversation?
Misconceptions. I would say like I think everyone kind of talks down on mixed micron, or I would say select micron, not so mixed micron. I think there's a big misconception with that. I think like select micron is it's not the most flavorful, but it's people say that there's fats and lipids in it, but if your hash maker knows what they're doing, they're food grading the certain microns that don't really need to be in that select micron. So if, for instance, usually like a good select micron would be anywhere from a 45U to like a 159. And if there's anything other than that, then you're smoking food grade at that point. But
yeah,
like I would say that a mixed micron and if it's a good hash maker, a mixed micron could be just as good as a 90U. It's just they're going to be a little different, but I mean, obviously the 90U is going to burn a lot cleaner in the banger, and it could be potentially a lot more flavorful. But I think that if it's a proper hash maker, the mixed micron should be just as good as a 90U.
Yeah, you know what, and I'm with you on that, because, making hash myself, I've seen it myself. I'm not just on the customer marketing side of it, because there's a lot of marketing that goes into stuff like that, the 90U, the best shit ever, so yeah, I totally get it, there's a lot that goes into it. And even then, is 90U really where it's at, essentially, like what science do we have to back that up? Other than us just saying, well, it tastes good, it looks great, and it does this. I think in the future that needs to be studied, so we can kind of, and not just for the public and the consumers, for us hash makers, so we know, what are the best micron numbers to use. Because I'm with you on that. We actually stop at 72. We do 159, 72, and that's usually what we stop at, is right there. And we found that's a little sweet spot for us. And well, 90 only, and I'm like, oh. I get all the reasonings around it, but at the same time, like you said, depending on who the hash maker is, depending on the product, the plant, the cultivar, and genetics, so much that it might not matter. We had this one; it was called Popstar, and I showed it to one of my buddies, connoisseur and everything, and he was like, "Bro, the heads are like still attached, intact in this one. Like, this is fire." And like, beautiful color, great on the terps. My favorite, all time that we've made. And it was 159 to 72. It wasn't 90U at all. And he was praising it as high as like a 90U. And I was like, damn, okay. And it was just that cultivar, in particular, and the way that we washed it and everything. So yeah, I kind of feel that the misconception of microns is kind of hurting us in a sense. Like, I don't get me wrong, there is a point where you are smoking food grade. But 159, to that one, to the 45, you're really not. And sometimes I feel the color. Some people kind of take quality as into the color, but color doesn't always tell you everything. Sometimes you can have something a little bit darker and it's still fire. It's just a little bit older, or darker for whatever reason. It doesn't mean that it's green or tinted, but some people want it as white as snow, and I'm like, God damn, buddy, homie, what do you want? Like, there's a limit to
that week 6.
Yeah, exactly. That's really what what we're looking at when we want the lighter colors. We're pulling it earlier, an earlier time than you would when you smoke it, so you don't get that color. Because I try to tell people, if you have cannabis that you let fully mature and you cured it out, it's probably going to come out a little darker. It might taste great, it might smoke well, but the color is the color, because what color the trichomes are. So what is your experience dealing with that issue too, as well, with the color? Do you run into that too with the customers, kind of like their misconception of color, dark color equal bad, or are you kind of figuring out a way to get around that?
I believe that, but definitely I can see that like certain strains like Trop Cookies came out darker for me, and I did get it back from get some feedback from my vendors saying that they had like a hard time kind of selling it. It sat a little bit longer compared to other strains that were definitely a lot lighter, or maybe it was just the terpene profile. But I do think that a lot of customers shop off of color. They think that the whiter it is, the blonder it is, the cleaner it is, which, I mean, that doesn't really necessarily mean it's cleaner. It's more more fats. It's really an indication of the harvest time. And I mean, I just go off of whenever my plant is the ripest and I smell it the best. And I think that the plant is done, and I try to capture that. You know what I mean? I don't, I just try to catch the plant at its prime, and I try to bring that into the jar pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're lucky to have lighter. Yeah, yeah, and we're lucky to have lighter hash these days, because back in the days they didn't have light hash like this. Don't get me wrong, it existed, but it wasn't like as common as it is today. You know, like today you could find, you know, some, you know, Snow White shit pretty as easy as anything else. You know, back in the day that was like the rarity, like, oh my God, look at that, or, you know, the red stuff, or, you know, whatever color that they, you know, they had it back then. It's many things go into that, and so yeah, I think that's something that, you know, of course, the consumer is going to be the one that decides at the end of the day. But I think if we educate the consumer a little bit better, which is something that we're doing right now on the show, they can make a better decision at the register. You know, like, okay, this might be a little bit darker, but how does it smoke and how does it smell? You know, it's not black. You know, it just might be a little amber, a little bit, you know, a little bit more than, you know, the regular color that, you know, most people like. But is it a good product still? You know, most people like purple, but I can turn a plant purple usually by just dropping the temp. You know, like it's just a color.
Oh yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, you know, don't get me wrong, there's genetics, all the other stuff, but you know, for the most part, you can fake it. You know, and I've seen it happen. You know, like people grow in a temp or a room that they don't really have a lot of control in, and it's winter, it just turn purple. So you know, really not much you can do there. But yeah, you know, what are some things that you're working on right now, hash wise? I know you told me the other day, you know, you're working on some stuff. Is there anything you care to talk about on that sense?
Yeah. So I just recently, I think it was last weekend, I went up to Michigan, and I took I don't know if you're familiar with Cuban grower, but he's based out of California. He's just well-known like a hash maker for making like dry sift, and he's just a big hash maker in the high time scene kind of. He's just a kind of OG, but I went out to Michigan and took a seminar, learned how to make some fire melt and some good fresh press. So I'm going to be releasing some malt and fresh press this drop, and then I'm working on some yin yangs again, and that drop will be the black maple, candy fumes, hive, and Tropicana cookies. So
nice. It sounds like a good lineup.
Yeah.
And you know, I love, you know, hearing that, you know, you're implementing new tech, or, you know, techniques to the style and everything, and releasing it in that. And I had no clue that the market was wanting a fresh press so much. You know, we just so happened to release one. Just, you know, it is what it is, and people loved it. Like, oh my God, you guys released a fresh press! I'm like, oh, I didn't even know you guys wanted that. You know, like, okay, now we know. So yeah, I guess the market wants fresh press, and it's dope that you're doing that too, man. And you know, I'm excited to see, you know, what differences, you know, this technique is doing and everything.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, fresh press is obviously, it's hard to deal with, but I think that's why the stigma kind of grew on it. It just kind of became hated because it's such a difficult jar to deal with, and it's also about what kind of jar it's in. So
yeah, right.
But, I believe sometimes fresh press. There's been some tests done. The fresh press between cold cure, same strain, and they do come out terpier with the fresh press. But I feel like fresh press can be a lot more flavorful, more representation of the actual product. It just needs to be done right, and it's just you can see how clear it is. You can see the quality of it based off of the look, and you don't really need to smoke it. Really, just you can kind of look at it and tell how good the quality is, just like a full melt kind of ordeal. But I think that a lot of people sleep on fresh press. I think it's the best representation of it. I think a cold cure is kind of degradation of flavor, but that's just me.
No, and I'm with. I really like fresh press too. You know, don't get me wrong. Cold cure is cool. Watching it marble and all that cool stuff and transform into, like, you know, the butter. But I'm with you. You know, that as soon as you cut that plant down, it starts degrading. And that means the compounds, everything within it. So that means the hash that you have in your possession, it's doing the same thing. May it curing, but it's also the THC is turning to CBN, and you know that whole process is still happening. Be it slow, it's still occurring. And you know the sooner that you get to try it, the more fresh it's going to taste, and you can try it at its peak. I do feel that the curing process does kind of change flavors a little bit, kind of
Yeah,
matures things, whatever. But I do like fresh press. Like, I feel like you get everything all at once versus trying
yeah.
to isolate something else later on. You know what I mean?
I've also heard people say like it's so much terps that it's kind of hard for your senses to even like comprehend it. So that's sometimes why a cold cure might taste better to you, but sometimes the fresh press is just almost too terpy for you to even like. It's almost harsh for some people.
Yeah.
Some people I've heard some people say that, but like I said, it needs to be done right.
Yeah, and we found out that certain terps and even the sulfurs and stuff like, or the sulfurs that's in cannabis, if they're at too high at concentrations, they do taste nasty. Like, one, I've shared this a lot, but it's funny. Scatoli, at low percentages, scatoli has like a sweet aroma flavor, but at higher percentages, it's shit. It smells like poop. And so that's what scatoli is, from the term scat. For the part of it's from the word scat, which is poop, and that's where they get a lot of perfumes and stuff like that, is from that compound, scatoli. And so at very low percentages, you're going to find that sweet aroma that people like, that comes from it. But yeah, you go too much, and then you enter poo land. So yeah, that could be the same thing with with the terps with this. That some people are a little more sensitive to it. And so that's just a little bit too orange for them, where it's just like, nope, I don't like it. It tastes gross. It's too orange for me, or whatever. And so now I get it. Some people are just too sensitive to certain flavors that it's just too much. It only needs to be in there in very minute quantities for it to really do anything. So yeah, it's interesting to see what what we're finding with the Tropicana sulfur is only one, the sulfurs and stuff, and the terpenes, because we're learning new shit about it all the time, what they do, what really smells come from what. And this whole percentage thing, what is going to be our sweet spot for hash rosin? Where do we want to be? Do you want to be at a 3%? Do we want to be at a 5%? Do you want to stay away from an 8% because of the reasons we just spoke about? This is all the stuff that we're kind of figuring out. And so in your opinion, what do you think percentage wise is the best for terps, for your product?
Oh, I would say like around anywhere from 4.5% to 6%. Obviously, that's probably where I've tested at. That's probably the range I've tested in. I haven't really tested any higher than about 6%, but I've heard people test it at 10%, but that's insane for rosin. You definitely got to have some sappy stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And when I hear that, I'm kind of like, you adding shit in there, homie?
Right? Who's testing that for you? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You slipping some extra bucks for some extra numbers? Like, what's going on here? Is that for real? So yeah. Well, thank you for that. And updating us on everything. Is there anything else you want to share before we move on to the next conversation?
I think that drop should be coming out just before Valentine's, so hopefully I can get it out. I think should make it towards your way too. So
nice. Well, before for the other part of the question of that, where are you located right now, and what shops are you in the state?
Yeah, so in Albuquerque, I'm located in my flower. I have flower available right now. It's been a little bit. We had a little gap in between our rosin drops, just because we run one strain at a time per room. So I try to get at least 2 to 3 strains to drop for the rosin. So that takes a little bit of. I harvest a room maybe once every 2 to 4 weeks. So I have to pile it up a little bit. But so currently I just have a flower available right now, and in town you're gonna be able to find it in Albuquerque in Breaking Bud and Dark Matter, and then I would say down south Queen Bee has some, Casa Verdes. That's like Las Cruces, and then Sunland Park, High Life has some. They just got some Candy Fumes flower, and that's in Sunland Park. And then we have Token Tony and Clovis. They have some of our Candy Fumes flower and Hive, I'm pretty sure. So let me see. Am I missing any more? I probably am missing one. I'm sorry if I missed one, but that's about as many as I remember, I think.
Well, it's a good little mix of places, for the most part. Most people in the state can, try your product. So if you guys are in those areas, check them out. You name drop some people I know very close and everything. I'm like, cool, good shops, good choices, man. So you're definitely keeping it local. So I appreciate it. And man, I appreciate your product and all that. So before we move on, where can people find you online and everything so they can check out your product?
Yeah. So my personal Instagram is JJ underscore world 505. My work Instagram is going to be no underscore till underscore world 505, and that is our company Instagram.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you joining me, brother, and I look forward to continue this conversation on some other topics. So let's get on it, man.
Let's do it.
Thank you everybody for watching again. We're gonna pause real quick and say thank y'all for tuning in to this new season of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. It's been fun. We know the world and the state that we're in is a little weird, so I hope you guys can at least enjoy a little bit of a smoke while we're watching this, because it should be around close to 4:20 right now where you guys are watching the episode. So what's going on, Gino?
I'm not. Are you trying to say goodbye to the stream or something like that?
No. I was just thanking them for watching and everything. If someone's been watching for 4 seasons, I gotta thank them sometimes.
Yeah. By the way, the bots are live in the chat.
Oh, we got oh man, I forgot to tell my friend I was streaming, so I don't have a monitor, a moderator there. Yeah. So I think you have mod privileges. You could probably kick them.
I'm not signed in.
You're not signed in? Okay, cool. So we're gonna move on to the next topic and everything. Appreciate that update, Gina. I'm gonna give you guys a legislative. Oh, do you have something real quick, JJ?
Oh no.
Okay, cool.
I thought he was frozen for a second.
So I was like, oh no, what happened? All right, so I'm going to give you guys a quick legislative update. As you guys know, and I updated last week, we started the legislative process. So bills are in, but this is only a 30-day session. So when that happens, they're usually just focused on the bill, very selective things. And this year, they're really focusing on safety. I think also like public health and stuff like that. I think public health is probably their number one thing. They're doing stuff for like doctors to try to get more doctors into the state and stuff like that. So they're kind of preoccupied with that. So there's really not going to be as many cannabis bills as you would see in a 60-day session. And to be honest, we're probably not going to see as many as you would in the other prior 30-day sessions that we've had. Because of the state of the world and everything going on, our state is trying to catch up or trying to get ahead of certain issues, or at least try. That's what governments usually do, is they try to fix these issues, but they usually come up a little bit short. So let's just hope that something positive comes from this 30-day short session. But luck would have it, we do at least have one cannabis-related bill that has been introduced so far, and that is SB 129, or Senate Bill 129. It's called Adverse Employment Action and Cannabis. I know it's a weird name, but it's a very short bill, and to be honest, that's good. That helps it, along the way to pass. It's only one page, and really all it does is it solidifies the work protections that medical cannabis patients were supposed to have since like 2018, 2019, when they changed the medical cannabis laws. They found that the way that they wrote it was very weak. And so when it came to practicing that law, most employers were like, no. And, we're still going to fire you for it. And so it didn't really hold up. And I think once it went to the courts, that was still the case. And so the legislature is now, all right, we don't want to deal with this. So we're going to solidify that with this language here.
That's a good thing.
It is. I think it's a great thing. And it specifies that, it's for a patient who is not at work. So they're saying, so they're specifying the patient won't be able to use it and consume it at work. And to be honest, if you're an employer and you allow him to do it, because maybe they have a headache or maybe some cream or something like that, and that's your call. But what this is saying is you can't punish them for off-duty use, or off-work use. Just like alcohol and most other substances that, people use, it's off work. And if you don't show up high or drunk still, then you should be fine. Yeah. And they're saying the same with the medical. And to be honest, this is a start, and it should be for everybody, recreational or medical, but they always start on the medical side, see how it goes there, and then they expand it to the recreational side. So it's a start. And to be honest, should have been the case the whole time. Yeah. And they should have did this right years ago. I hope this bill passes, but right now it has 3 committees scheduled. And I've shared with you guys before, if a bill has more than 2-3 committees, sometimes I'd say 2, it's most likely going to die. And it's called death by committee. So if you see a bill and it has 4 committees, that bug is dead. It's dead on arrival, probably died before it even got to committee. So this one has 3. To me, it signals a death by committee just for the fact that it's a 30-day session. Yeah. And not every committee meets every day. And I think that's one thing that people understand is like, well, it only has this many committees. I'm like, yeah, but that committee meets Tuesday and Thursday in a 4-day session, or, a 4-week session. They're only going to meet a handful of times to hear all of these bills. Like, you guys are crazy. And then on top of that, they only have sometimes 2 to 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours in these committees before they have to go to a Senate or House floor hearing. And sometimes they do miss them, but sometimes it's key and important for them to be there because they missed the vote. And they can be excused for the vote, and sometimes other senators can vote for them, but that's not always the case, and that's not always what happens. So that's the case with this bill right here. Is we're more than likely probably going to see it get to its first committee, and it is scheduled for a committee. Just there's no date for that committee just yet. And the committee it's in right now is, what is it called? The Senate Health and Public Affairs Committee. That one's fine. That one should be okay. The one that I'm worried about, and it's the second committee or third committee that's going to be in, is the Senate Judiciary. And that's where Senator Cervantes is in. I've told you guys about Senator Cervantes. He's a representative or a senator from like the Sunland Park area. And he's very, very harsh. He's more of a conservative Democrat, than he is a liberal Democrat. He more caucuses with Republicans than he does Democrats. And it shows with the way he runs his committees and stuff. But his party has nothing to do with how much of a hard ass he can be. He's just a hard ass because he's a hard ass. And he kind of feels that he knows the best for everybody and everything. And so sometimes that gets kind of murky. When you get into his committee, he allows more emotion to take over than common sense. And I'm worried that when this gets to his committee, there's going to be similar arguments that I heard years ago that, well, me as an employer, I should be able to fire anybody for any reason. Why is cannabis this and blah, blah, blah. And so in New Mexico, our lawmakers are allowed to have businesses still. So a lot of these guys are employers. So they don't want to lose the power to fire somebody for something they just disagree with. And they don't want to lose that power. And so that's why I feel some of these guys are making that argument in these committees, and they're lawmakers, and they get to make these decisions. But at the same time, they're not taking into account the medical cannabis patient who gets shit on every single day for just being a medical cannabis patient and how hard it is. And we're using legitimate medicine in New Mexico that's upheld by the state, Supreme Court.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to ask you if it were any other medication that would affect you at work, or that you were taking any other medication, they wouldn't be able to fire you for taking those other medications, would they? Even if you happen to be taking some very powerful, opioids or something else like that. If they said, "Oh, we're firing you because you're taking this for pain," they wouldn't be able to get away with that.
Yeah, because you have a prescription.
Exactly. Yeah. So if if you're taking your cannabis as a medical patient, it's your medicine. Yeah, I absolutely agree. That's some bullshit. Yeah. It's the fuckery again.
The fuckery, and it continues. So JJ, so far, how do you feel about this bill and everything behind it and all that? I know the little nuances had to explain, but what's your thought? How far do you think this will get?
I will be super surprised if it passes. I think that there'll be too many angry people saying that this needs to not pass.
Yeah, and that's been the issue every time this has been brought up, because this isn't the first time this bill or this issue has been brought up in a bill at the legislature. Every time it's been brought up, it's always been the people like, oh, we're going to have people high everywhere, this and that. And I'm like, dude, there's people high everywhere already. This is like what you talk. Well, what's the law going to change? Nothing, because people are going to do exactly what they want regardless of a law. And we see that every day. And I don't think a lot of people know this. The average American breaks 4, and this could be more now, 4 federal laws a day without realizing it. And this is a statistic that I heard back in 2008 before I joined the Army from Fox News. Don't know why it sticks in my head, but this is a fact from back then. And they're like,
hey, I'm going to tell you right now, in 2026, that's probably about 5 or 6 by now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Back then, this is back in like 2007, 2008. That was 4. And now it's probably 6, 8, whatever. And that's without us knowing. And that's on the federal side. On the state side, there's actually websites that track stupid state laws. In New Mexico, we have some of our own stupid state laws. One is here in Las Cruces. It's illegal for you to walk down Main Street with a red lunchbox.
Don't know what? Saturday morning at the craft market, I think I'm going to find me a red lunchbox and walk down Main Street.
Get arrested for no reason.
Right. They're going to be like, we can arrest you for this, right? And there used to be, and I don't know if it's on the books anymore. There used to be a dumb state law, and my mom told me this when I was a kid, and maybe they've changed it since then. But it used to be, and it was from back in like the 1900s. When you got out of jail, you were supposed to get $100 and your horse. And I'm like, well, fuck. I was like,
where's my horse?
Yeah, I was like, where's my damn horse?
Right.
Yeah, so it's one of those like old time laws and everything. So what I'm trying to say is that no matter what we do or how hard we try, we're always going to be breaking a law somehow, even when we don't know it. like spitting on the sidewalk, jaywalking, people not waiting the exact amount of time at a stop sign.
I can tell you one specifically, and it wasn't even that long ago when they were trying to ban more smoking and stuff. In buildings. They actually had when it was on the books in Las Cruces for a little while that it passed that you had to be a certain amount of feet away from any building to be able to have a cigarette, which would basically put you in the middle of the road. And the fine was higher for smoking a cigarette than it was if you got caught smoking a joint in public.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you were better off smoking a joint next to the building than you were complying and smoking in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
That's freaking hilarious.
That was a real thing, and obviously they took that off the books. This was in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Damn, I'm old.
Well, I felt old saying that in 2008.
JJ wasn't even born.
Oh my God. I wasn't even middle school yet. So yeah. I hope something positive happens with this bill because, like we're saying, there's just a lot of stupid laws on the books, and we don't need employers to have that much control over your life. I feel like employers have way too much control or power over people's lives, and to the point where I'm like, dang, I feel like sometimes an employer has more control over my life than my own government, and like my government shouldn't either. But like, holy crap, that's saying something.
I don't know. It kind of goes back and forth for me.
Yeah.
But the radio industry is federally regulated.
There you go. Yeah, I know. That's the reason why this show only exists on podcast
on
version.
The internet.
Yeah, on the internet. Only FCC regulations does not allow us to talk about cannabis over the air. So that's the reason why we're here. But anyway, what are some other thoughts that you have, JJ? On this, bill and everything in the legislature, or do you have any other hopes for this session for something else to change that would maybe that you're seeing that needs to be changed?
I would say I think you just need to let people do what they want, honestly. If not, they're going to break the rule, like you said. So they're just going to, or they're just going to go find a job, or just, not have a job and then be homeless. So,
yeah, and I kind of feel I'm with you on that. I feel over-regulation, and not just in the cannabis industry. I feel many industries are over-regulated. And we need some deregulations on many fronts. Don't get me wrong, it shouldn't be wild fucking west, but the regulations like the tracking system, tagging every freaking plant, writing stuff on jars that doesn't make any sense and doesn't really mean anything. All that stuff can be pulled away from the industry and everybody would be a little bit happy. You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous that not only do we have to deal with the state government for licensing, you have to deal with your local government. You have to deal with the county government. You have to deal with all these little municipalities you have to deal with. And if you're on a county line, oh God, help your soul. If you got to deal with two counties, there's some people in Chaparral that deal with that. And I'm like, oh man, that sucks because it's Doña Ana and Otero County.
Yeah.
So sometimes they deal with both. And I'm like, it sucks for you, dude. I don't want to deal with that. Or the guys that are really close to Texas, they deal with some stuff too, but for the most part they've had it figured out. But yeah, that's everything I have for the legislative side. There's no psilocybin bills or anything in. I was told that there was a psilocybin bill, but I haven't found it yet on the NM Legisite. Maybe it exists but hasn't been introduced officially. So I'll keep an eye out on it. I'm going to keep everybody updated on the whole legislative stuff that's going on as we go. Just stay tuned to my socials and everything like that. And you guys will know. So I got one more topic. I know Gino, we know it's a long episode. We got one more topic for the end of the episode. And this one's kind of important and something that I've talked about actually a couple episodes ago. And I was brought back up because I saw it in an article and I was like, you know what? This is something that I do need to keep bringing up because this is huge. So a company in Missouri got sued by an ex-contractor for $2.5 million and the company lost. And the reason why is because this contractor, he was in a room and another employee at the facility turned on a vacuum. And I guess that kicked up a bunch of plant particulates all over the air because it was in a grow facility. And either they're in the trimming area or they're making joints. I don't know how Missouri's licensing works in that sense, how they have it structured where you do what where. But a bunch of plant particulate got in the air. And he ended up getting asthma, a bunch of breathing problems. He ended up actually having a heart attack that was brought on by it. What the document said is that it was so bad that he can't work anymore, not just in the cannabis industry anymore. He can't work anymore. He's disabled. So He was awarded $2.5 million for it. And on top of it, his wife got $500,000 from the lawsuits for damages as well, because it caused issues with their relationship, and it caused her suffering as well because their husband had heart attacks. They lost money, this and that, blah, blah, blah. So total, they left out with bandits with $3 million from that company in Missouri.
She's still going to leave him.
So this is, I want to share this story because this is a lesson that we in New Mexico and nationwide, I say New Mexico because this is my state and I care about y'all. We need to learn from this lesson. And that means we need to start making changes yesterday. And those changes are providing proper PPE to employees, making proper changes within our own facilities and workspaces to ensure that our employees are safe and ourselves. But our employees do come first because they're the ones helping us out. And one, you don't want to injure somebody for the rest of their life, kill somebody. And then number three, which should be your last concern, is getting sued to the point where you have no more money and you are now struggling, or you go out of business because of this. I'm probably going to keep bringing this up as more stuff comes, because this keeps happening. These stories keep popping up. This was decided on in November, so a couple months ago, and it's kind of, it was reported on back then. I think I shared it a couple times, but I didn't really talk about it that much. And I kind of feel that now we do need to start bringing these up more, because that's huge. $3 million because, the guy didn't have a respirator and didn't have a chance to whatever, that's a big chunk for everything. So what do you think of this story so far, JJ?
It's something super serious that you need to take serious. Like, you definitely need to be, if you're handling any kind of loose material like that, you need to have a respirator on and PPE for sure. Yeah. That's definitely messing with people's lives, especially as an employer. Make sure you have SOPs in place for that.
For sure. And those of you who are like, why does he mention SOPs? SOPs aren't meant just to be paperwork. SOPs are meant to tell you how to go about something, either how to fix it, how to operate something, how to wear a mask, and why you wear the mask. And this, in the documents that I was reading and everything, it's unfortunate that they said that even if he did use a respirator, it would have taken a very high end, or even then the high end respirator wouldn't have helped because of how small the particulates get. And so, even then it would have helped, but it wouldn't have been a full preventive measure. So I think, going in and looking at the practices that we use today to do certain things may have to change. We may have to start doing pre-rolls under hoods. You know what I mean? Like, under air hood, is ventilating out away from you. That may be where the industry has to go in the future to avoid this 100%. Because smoking cannabis is one thing, but you're not supposed to inhale it like in the plant particulate. You're not going to snort, you're not going to grind a gram of weed, put it out in the line and snort it. That's not.
Yeah, there are better things for that.
Yeah. There's another plant that people do with that, and it's still not good for you.
Yeah, I've probably trimmed the past 7 years of my life, and I can tell the past couple months, or I don't know if it's just the quality of material I'm working with. The past couple months has definitely been messing me up with my sinuses, and I could definitely tell. So I've definitely been having to wear like my full respirator when I trim, when I wash, when I press. It's definitely something that's starting to agitate me, and I've been noticing that it's definitely starting to catch up to me. I didn't notice it the first couple of years of doing it, but it's definitely catching up to me. So definitely been trying to take my health a little bit more serious.
Yeah, and it's even for the smaller growers, that prolonged exposure year after year, that'll add up on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that, and I've joked about this, in 10 years, we're going to see those commercials. If you worked at a marijuana growing facility, you could be entitled to compensation. Yeah. That's a real thing. We're already seeing it here, but we're going to see it en masse because you have these big MSOs that are in several different states. And so they're going to end up, going through the same thing. And that commercial, it's a joke right now, but I have a feeling that joke is going to become a reality. And this is just the beginning. We haven't seen anything like this in New Mexico yet. I do know people that have been getting sick in respiratories because of this, but we haven't seen anybody step up and actually put a lawsuit in over it.
Give it time.
That's I was just going to say, in time, I'm sure we'll see it eventually. But as for right now, I haven't seen anything in New Mexico. If I'm wrong, please let me know. Shoot me a message. Say, hey, dude, this actually exists, and I'll cover it because that's something huge. But I just want everybody to know, keep your employees' safety as one of your top priorities. If not for them, for your future and everything. Think about that at least. If you got kids, they're going to be struggling if you go out of business because of something stupid like this. That was preventable. Because a lot of work stuff, they are preventable, and who knows, the flow hoods maybe have to be something that's in manufacturing facilities, and even I might have to do that eventually at my own. So we'll see, and we'll see how it goes and everything. And more power to this guy who got his $2.5 million payday, and I hope that his life gets a little bit better.
Work another day in his life.
Oh no, he's good for life, and his wife's good even. So I hope they're happy. I hope they're good. Hope they invest it wise, and
she's still gonna leave him.
Oh yeah.
I know we're gonna see in a couple of years she'll have a new business herself. So that's all I have. JJ, thank you so much again for joining me. It's been a great conversation, man. Much luck to you. Please keep looking out for your own health, because you got a long time with us and a long time for us to enjoy your products, man. And I want to keep enjoying it. So thank you so much. Is there anything? Oh no, thank you. Is there anything that you want to talk about or say before we end the show?
Thank you for your service. Thank you for having me on this podcast. I appreciate it. Definitely a good time.
Heck yeah, man. Well,
thank you all for watching.
This episode will air everything tomorrow. Right now, if you're on Twitch, you're watching it live, so you saw all our fuck ups anyway. So tomorrow we'll air the regular episode, or air on the regular sites and everything like that. So I will see y'all mañana. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, whatever you got to do to stay in the know. We'll be back next week. All right, shoots.
Much love. Wow.